Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the New York Stock Exchange. My name is Dave Vellante, and this is our AI Factories, Data Centers of the Future series. Justin Borgman's back in our studio. Good to see you, CEO of Starburst. Thanks for coming in again, face-to-face.
My pleasure. Glad to be back.
Yeah, so you've got some customer advisory board action going on this week. Two days in Midtown,
New York,
right?
You got it, yeah. Busy week.
What'd you say, 20, 25 customers coming in?
That's right.
What do you guys do? They just sort of brain dump, brainstorm, show them the roadmap, get feedback?
For me, it's one of the best times of the year because it's an opportunity to share with them a little bit of the roadmap of where we're going and really get their feedback firsthand. And you know, our customer advisory boards tend to be individuals who are, you know, key decision makers, key influencers within the companies that they work for. And you know, we really value their opinion. So it has a material impact on, you know, how we shape our own product strategy. So very excited for it.
So Jensen was here at the exchange yesterday. Michael Dell he had his security analyst meeting yesterday. And I heard Jensen on TV this morning. Of course, all the talk is about the AI factories, the infrastructure, the power,
yes,
the chips, the networking. You know, the storage, obviously Dell talks about that. And Dell at his financial analyst meeting talked a lot about the Dell Lakehouse as part of the data strategy. But it was interesting listening to Jensen this morning on TV. He talked about sort of this stack that's emerging, power being a big part of that, energy, of course. But he didn't talk, I didn't hear it at all about the data. And it just seems to me that data is the fuel for AI factories. And so I wonder if you could address that, what you're hearing from your customers, how they're getting their data ready to really actually run these AI factories, as Jensen calls them.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, it's almost like the early days of computing, talking about the hardware without the software. The hardware's no good without the software. And I think similarly, AI is no good without the data. It really is a data story. And it's about bringing the right data to bear, you know, the right context, the right proprietary enterprise data to the equation so the model can be useful. And I think we're still in those early innings. I think that's why there is so much attention on the lower levels of infrastructure, you know, the power, the silicon, the metal, and gradually as these use cases become production and people start to see real business value, I think that conversation is going to move up the stack, and I think the focus is going to move up the stack.
I'm curious as to how you see that evolving, because we talk a lot about AI in the cloud. You know, a lot of the series that we're doing here with AI Factories is focused on enterprise AI.
Yep.
What that on-prem AI stack looks like, moving intelligence to the data versus moving the data, you know, into the cloud. As you well know, a lot of institutions, a lot of enterprises, they're not ready for liquid cooling.
Right.
They're not building necessarily big AI factories like the CoreWeaves and the Lambdas are doing. As well, I want to ask you, I want to put forth the premise and get your reaction. So even if you could centralize everything into a lake house, and I know your strategy is to leave the data where it is and kind of federated, but even in that instance, if you have marketing data and you have sales data and you have financial data and supply chain data, even if it's all in one place or even accessible via like Starburst, there's still silos.
Yep.
Because that data is not harmonized. And so it seems like you can bring AI to any one of those silos within the application, you know, stack. What are enterprises doing to sort of bring all that together in a sort of harmonized data set so they can actually serve up agents? I know it's sort of forward thinking and we're not there yet, but how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I think this is the key challenge for enterprises today is how do I get the right data to bear for my AI applications, the agents that I want to build. Our answer builds on that federated architecture and is really about assembling what we call data products, which are essentially, you know, views of your data with metadata and business context built in that you can now pass on to an LLM as part of your sort of chat experience. And that context, that enterprise context, is what what's going to make all the difference, really, in terms of bringing these applications to life. And so, we think every enterprise needs to be thinking about how they get access to all the data that's relevant. And to your earlier point, I mean, we've always believed that you'll never get it all into one database. We've just never seen that really in history. I mean, that was my experience even at Teradata, which was an early pioneer in this centralization, concept, and it never really happened. I just think, the laws of physics almost work against it. The natural entropy in the universe. There's always going to be all these different data silos.
Yeah, you're right. Teradata kind of got it all started. They were really the first kind of converged database infrastructure, and we've seen Oracle take a similar path.
Yep.
But so this week you're meeting with a number of large financial institutions. What do you see them doing in terms of building sort of that on-prem AI capability? You hear, of course, everybody's talking about the MIT study. Only 5% of POCs that go into production are actually getting ROI within 6 months. I mean, I think reading that study was a very narrow definition of business value, if you will.
Yep.
But nonetheless, there kind of is a sentiment. People are concerned about, how do I get value out of this? So what are you seeing those large financial institutions doing? Because they tend to be a harbinger of the broader market. Let's start there.
Yeah, so I think what we're working with them on is, how do you create this sort of agentic substrate, if you will, this layer that provides governed access to the data that you're looking for, and doing that in a very controlled way. Everything has to be compliant in financial services. I think that's why they are such pioneers in pushing the envelope of how you can build these types of architectures at scale. And so working with them to leverage obviously our own technology as this substrate, where we can connect to the 50, 100, 200,000 different data sources that they have. They can construct these curated data products. Those data products can be used for analytics and BI, but they can also be used for agents, and that allows you to create useful, self-contained, agentic experiences.
We were talking to Michael Dell yesterday. We were asking him about his internal use of AI.
Yeah.
And he spoke to this in the security analyst meeting as well. It feels like at companies like Dell, who are probably pretty huge opportunity to cut costs.
Yeah.
Right. And scale without labor.
Yep.
And what my inference in speaking to him was, look, we're really just getting started with agents. We're going after opportunities where our data sets are actually solid.
Yep.
As we were sort of talking about before. But we don't want to, I call it paving the cow path with process. We don't want to just take an existing process and automate it. We're doing some of that. But really what we're doing is kind of rethinking our entire processes. And so are you seeing, how are you seeing that play out within your leading edge customers? Are they, sort of focusing on narrow use cases, maybe smaller NPVs, hitting singles, I call it, or are they starting to really look at sort of reformatting, rethinking their entire business processes?
Yeah, they definitely want to get there. And I will say, actually, Michael is really an early adopter and pioneer pushing the envelope, I think, within Dell. Dell's been a great partner of ours. They're also a customer of our technology. And it's incredible to see, the leadership from him at the top looking to implement these technologies even in the way that they do business. But I would say, what we see across customers is two different early use cases. One is for effectively what I'll call an executive agent, basically a ChatGPT experience for the C-suite, to be able to interact with data as a supplement to the dashboards that they create, right? They've always had dashboards with the KPIs of the business. Now being able to self-serve and interact with that data in a conversational way is very powerful. And it demonstrates value at a level of the organization that then creates enthusiasm and helps galvanize interest around continuing to invest in these technologies. So that's one pattern we've seen. The other is around very specific business use cases where there's an element of the way that a company is going to market today, that they'd like to incorporate agents involved. Maybe that's some aspect of customer support or customer service. Maybe that is in the sales organization and helping to prepare their sellers or have the right conversations with customers based on what a customer's looking for. And so those are some early examples that we're seeing.
So I interpret that as, and it seems to me there's ROI there.
Yep.
I call it sort of self-serve BI.
Yeah.
Where you can actually interpret the data on your own. You can speak to the data set.
That's right.
And don't have to go through an analyst. Or maybe the analyst gets like superpowers and could do a lot more in a lot less time. So that's productivity.
Yep.
And the support and service piece. I mean, everybody's saying that that's working. And they're able to provide better customer service. You know, they're able to scale without new labor.
Right.
So those make a lot of sense to me. What I'm curious about is beyond that, some of the bigger wins. And so we have this theory that when we went from on-prem software to SaaS, a lot changed, particularly in the IT world.
Yeah.
Of course, cloud changed the IT heavy lifting, as Jassy used to call it, probably still does. But the technical model, the operational model, and the business model changed. SaaS, we brought multi-tenant, it brought subscription pricing, consumption pricing, and we feel like the move to Agentic, we call it service as software. In other words, services that are high productivity contributors that are delivered through software that are very process oriented. And our thinking is that the technical, the operational, and the business model will change again. The pricing models is going to change. And it's not just going to affect IT. Right. It's going to affect the entire organization across all industries.
Yes.
And the theory is that you'll start to see software like marginal economics hit enterprises, not just software companies.
Yep.
And a winner-take-most dynamic could emerge because of learning curve experience. Now that's going to take the better part of a decade to unfold.
Yeah.
Are your leading edge customers thinking about this? Are they paranoid about that? Are they diving in like you see Jamie Dimon saying we're going to own the future? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so first of all I buy into your thesis. I think that's absolutely what I would see as likely to occur, and I think what we see is frankly, the smart companies are paranoid, and I think rightfully so, because this can change everything. I mean, you could be third place in an industry and now become first place in that industry by putting these technologies to use quickly and efficiently, or you could go from first place to last place or not even exist anymore, right? So I think it truly is one of those existential threats. It's the asteroid that got rid of the dinosaurs type of thing, and you have to be thinking with that degree of urgency to reinvent yourself. And in the technology business, that's always been kind of a way of life. We've always had to reinvent ourselves, but I think what you're pointing to is this is now going to be more pervasive than even just the tech sector. Like every enterprise is going to have to reinvent itself.
And to get there, it really does seem like data. I mean, GPU. I think power, obviously, energy is a constraint. I ultimately don't think GPUs are going to be the constraint. I don't think silicon's going to be the problem. I do think data is going to be a constraint. You guys, play a big part of that. So what has to happen in your view to sort of remove that constraint? Obviously, you're playing a role in terms of federating the data, and that's a starting point. What about that notion of being able to look at an enterprise as a digital representation of a business and not strings, we've talked about this, that databases understand, but people, places, things, and activities like processes that are maybe part of that representation. Does it need like a graph database? Does it need some kind of new technology that's developed to harmonize that? We kind of call it the system of intelligence layer that does that harmonization, that governance, you guys play there, and then feeds the agents. How do you see that progressing?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more attention and focus both on the customer side and therefore also on the vendor side on creating this, semantic layer as it's often known.
Yep.
And I think there's opportunities, and this is an area that we're investing to help automate the creation of that semantic layer to basically do discovery on the data sets that exist and extract that business context, that business metadata to help enrich how to use and understand this data. And every company has to kind of get their house in order as it pertains to this, because again, that is going to be the fuel. You know, maybe to build on that analogy, it's like you have to refine the raw crude oil to make it useful to go into the engine, and I think that's an important area of focus for a lot of enterprises. And again, I think the ones that are really leaning in, especially a lot of those in financial services here within a mile radius of where we're sitting, they are focusing on getting that agentic substrate, getting that semantic layer, getting that infrastructure, that software infrastructure set up for success.
Yeah, I know. I was speaking to JPMC. It was at Snowflake.
Yep.
And they were basically. My interpretation was, yeah, we have our Snowflake analytics, up in the cloud.
Yep.
And that's part of it. But when I started to, push them on, well, what about this semantic layer? What about that harmonization? What about all the governance around that? They said, yeah, we had to build that ourselves.
Yep.
Okay, JPMC can do that.
Yeah.
What we're hoping is that the industry will sort of come up with solutions that, the mainstream enterprises that can't hire 1,000, AI, experts like JPMC can actually buy solutions. Do you see Starburst as contributing to that layer of the stack directly? Are you investing, R&D dollars in that sort of semantic layer? Do you see others? We know our friend Chris Lynch is working on that, very heavily. I think everybody is. I mean, you saw the announcement from Snowflake. But really, that's just the analytics piece of it. We're talking about analytics is tell us kind of what happened, maybe where it happened, and maybe a little bit of why it happened. But it's not great at telling us what's going to happen next and what should I do next. What's likely to happen next, and that's the piece that seems to be missing. Is Starburst? Where does Starburst play in that? Obviously, data access is critical.
Yeah.
Being able to query data where it is. Do you see yourselves trying to participate directly in that sort of semantic layer data harmonization, or is that somebody else's role?
We're providing the tools to do that. Yeah. So we have this concept. We call it data products. That term gets used by a lot of individuals.
Sure.
For us, it's really creating these views of data that can span multiple data sources. And of course, that leverages our federated platform. So you can stitch together a data product that leverages data from 3 different data sources all in one and make that consumable and useful. And so that's our avenue into helping customers build that semantic layer, make these agents more useful.
Is that different, Justin, than what you would think of traditionally as a materialized view, or is it a similar?
Yeah, great
kind of
question. It's similar, but different in the sense that you can actually. There's 2 ways to use Starburst on that. You can materialize a view, in which case we'll materialize it in Iceberg in a lake by default. We think that's always the best bet.
Yep.
Open standards, we've talked about that on previous sessions. Or you can do a live view, and that's part of what also makes Starburst unique is you can actually query that view, that virtual view, that logical view, without having to materialize. So you have flexibility there, and different use cases will dictate different models.
But that live view I see is critical to the topic that we were just talking about.
Yes.
That digital representation of an enterprise that's organic.
That's right.
I've avoided going down the Iceberg rat hole, my friend,
Yep.
and I think Sanjeev Mohan, Sanjmo.
Yep. Yes.
He said on theCUBE one time, well, can we please stop talking about Iceberg and let's talk about business value? And that's really where the business value comes in. That live view, I think, is an enabler to that digital representation of the enterprise. What's the blocker for companies getting there?
I think they're just not used to it. I think the industry for decades.
Used to making copies.
Yeah, exactly. It's been the ETL story for 30, 40 years. Right. So I think it's a different behavior.
Yeah. So I mean, bottom line is, don't give up trying to centralize your data and shoving it to one data store. That's never going to work. We can agree on that, especially. You're hearing all these edge use cases popping up.
Yep.
You're seeing all this amazing silicon happening at the edge.
Yep.
And so there's going to be a lot of activity there. Do you have, presumably you have an edge play. You can query edge.
We can. We absolutely can.
Yeah. Yep. So how do you see that playing out? Time frame? Is it when will it be a meaningful source of sort of revenue for you guys? Is it
on the edge
Yeah.
specifically? That's an interesting question. It's a very small part of our business today.
For sure.
But it's interesting to see how that evolves and how bandwidth continues to improve in terms of the ability to query and access that data.
Well, listen, good luck this week.
Thank you.
At your customer advisory board. I know those things are really critical to firms like yours, especially now that you've got a really strong foothold, particularly in financial services. I'm sure you're going to learn a lot. It's 2 days, right, that you're doing this?
It is, and I'll make a quick plug. In a few weeks, we have our Datanova event, which is our big customer event. It's October 22nd and 23rd. If any of your viewers want to tune in, you'll get to hear more about how customers are using these technologies.
And where is that?
That's virtual.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys have done a bunch of those too.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself doing a physical customer event at some point?
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
Good.
Yeah,
We'd like to be there. When you do
okay,
that.
great.
Cool.
Great.
All right, Justin, thanks very much.
Thank
for
you.
coming in. All right, thank you for watching. This is Dave Vellante for the entire CUBE team, our AI Factories Data Center of the Future series. We'll be right back from the New York Stock Exchange right after this short break.